This show is so tightly written where the time travel mechanics at play are so engaging and there's clearly a thread that's being followed rather than randomly pulling plot points out of thin air. I'm so used to time travel stories just saying, okay, we're going to save the world, right? That's the time travel generic, here we go story plot line. And we're like, okay, we changed this event, so now we're going to change this event to this one to this one. But if we're going to follow a story where we have a character like Matsumoto say, hey, I come from the future, this is the first point where shit goes wrong, we're going to stop it. Everything he says lines up, it's perfect if we're to believe him at face value. But once you change that plot point, if we're actually telling a time travel story, that plot point should then change the next one, the next singularity, the next irregularity that you have to deal with. Ever since we watched the floating hotel, right? It was supposed to crash land by Estella's hand at this moment. It happened sooner than expected. That's weird. Why would he get that wrong? Even though it's just a slight miscalculation, it still was different than he was predicting, and he wasn't completely right. In comes this. We have a facility, this island, being made fully AI controlled, and it's 20 years technology ahead of everything that humans can possibly do. So what we're seeing, and we see it at the beginning of the episode, we're seeing branching plot lines. While everything is pretty much happening as Matsumoto experienced and read about and probably learned about from his own timeline, because of the actions of Vivi and Matsumoto, things are happening different. Either things are happening quicker than they should, or maybe what we're trying to stop shouldn't be stopped at all. It's an interesting concept, and I really can tell that the writers behind this really know their stuff, which, of course, Chaos Child ReZero author, they know their stuff. This is pretty much their forte. They know exactly how to write these kinds of stories. But still, it feels very well woven, and that's what makes an episode like this so interesting, because now we really start looking back at the past timelines here and the past big events that they had to change, and it's really interesting to see the difference of what Matsumoto is saying going to happen and how it's still technically true, but things are starting to happen a bit quicker than we're expecting, and I think that's going to lead to Vivi possibly making a decision saying, you're saying this is going to happen, but honestly, I just don't believe it right now. I'm going to make my own decision. Will that create a timeline that's better or worse than the one that we're trying to prevent? I think that transition from the opening to her singing was some of the best directing we've seen in this show so far. I love the idea of the song then transitioning into the actual opening. It was just so cool to see how it was done, and I think a big topic that will probably be brought up in this week's episode is Matsumoto's new form, and on one hand, it's disappointing knowing we're probably not going to see him in his bear form anymore. I honestly thought he would just take over the bear again when he needed to solve an event, but it seems like the entire reason he was in that bear to begin with was technology wasn't caught up to his normal body. But now that we're 5 years once again into the future of where we last left off, he can now have his normal cube form, and it feels like we're playing Portal right now. To some people that may be disappointing. There was an initial it seems like we're not going to see the bear form anymore. But I think realistically it makes way more sense to have a body that allows you to float, do all these interesting things, and honestly seems pretty cool to me, so I'm excited to see what that body will actually let him do, because he was kind of like a hindrance in the stuffed animal form, so he definitely has a lot more freedom now with his actual body. It's pretty interesting too watching the evolution of Vivi's character, someone who naturally pushed back against, but after seeing as much as she has over now 5 episodes, or 3 plot lines at this point, I mean, it's kind of understandable why she's just saying, what do we have to do next? Because it's crystal clear at this point, nothing about Matsumoto has truly given her red flags, even if she still has that concern of, am I a virus? Do I have something in me? So it's just kind of cool. The AI love story, I think, is quite interesting because we have this man who's seemingly saying, I want to destroy this facility, knowing, if this is to be believed, that destroying that facility would then cause his marriage to be destroyed, basically. There wouldn't be enough ways to keep AIs going and things like that with the rate that they have been evolving. But then you see at the end of the episode, seemingly that so-called virus actually caused them to fight back, or at least that's how I interpreted it. So maybe what he was saying all along was a line. He actually wants, AIs to continue to survive because he wants his wife to remain, or maybe the wife had something to do with it, some tampering or something like that. We do get the information that seemingly the sisters are all connected to every single event, which is a pretty interesting plotline to consider going forward and to see what the whole mastermind behind everything actually is. But I think the idea of the first human and AI marriage setting a precedent, it's kind of a big deal. It's really, really big. On one hand, humans could argue it's counterproductive because the whole point of a lot of people would see marriage as a way to make a family, to have babies, to grow old together. When an AI will not only outlive you, there's no reproductive abilities there. But you could argue for the emotional side, it's an emotional connection. We see how AIs are in this world. They are, without a doubt, they can be just as sentient as anything as like a normal human. Granted, that facility, they were questioning like, what does cute mean? What does love mean? But still, there's an argument to be made on either side. It's interesting to see what that relationship was able to do for the general public's perception. Sure, some would want to push back against it, but there would be a lot saying it's a pretty, proactive and progressive way of propelling humanity forward. I think this was an episode that definitely, it wanted to make you really focus on the difference of timelines. All these events that were changing, they're still functioning as we're expecting, but the idea of that island, it shouldn't have been here already. It should have been in the future. Right? This technology is too advanced, and the fact that it appeared now, it's seemingly all of her actions are progressing things to either happen quicker or vastly different. And I'm really curious to see like what the resolution for this will be, because AI is attacking back at humans. It's the same thing as an AI crashing a space motel and killing people, right? There's going to be so much negativity pushed back against it, so what's the solution? An AI destroying all the other AIs, maybe? Like, I could definitely see potentially, this AI wife being the martyr, right? Saying, I'm going to stop them, kill myself to kill them, sort of a thing, so then the public will see, even if AIs did attack humans, and AI was the reason that all the other evil AIs, so to speak, were destroyed, right? There's a lot of interesting ways the story could go, and I'm very curious to see if this will maybe be the first point that something bad happens. Rather than solving an issue, we actually cause something bigger to happen. I think that could be a very possible thing. By the looks of it, what they just did is the entire reason why this facility even has trouble to begin with. Had they not gone to that island, had they not injected that virus, maybe nothing would have happened. Maybe the humans would have bombed, the AIs wouldn't have retaliated, and everything would have been A-okay. But by them actually planting it into that one robot, which was pretty heartbreaking. He had this like little vision where M's talking to this little girl saying, you can call me M. It was a name given to me by very nice folks, and then it shuts down. And I'm like, if you're able to make me feel bad for an R2-D2 looking robot, you did some good things with your writing, I have to say. So I'm very curious, because I actually think if they do go the direction of this just being a very bad plotline and then they have to correct their mistakes again in the future, it could be pretty interesting. But then again, we are only roughly halfway through the story, so the thought of them succeeding is still pretty high in my mind, but just like the idea and the wonder of, are they the actual reason this facility ever went rogue to begin with and attacked humans, is a pretty interesting concept. The visual production still remains just as crazy. You get these moments where Vivi is just detailed to such ridiculous standards. The eyes are always gorgeous, but then you get certain shots like these that you're just like, what did we do to deserve visuals like this? But seriously, just the consistency in the animation, the way the characters move, the technological feats to it, just all the HUDs and things like that, the glitches, there's just so many cool things happening. And seriously, with Studio knocking it out of the park, they've delivered 5 quality episodes, and I would argue some of the best quality that this year has seen to date, and it'll be pretty hard to match because you only get something like this if you've really had the time to polish everything, really have like a passion behind everything. And I mean, if you read interviews about this production, like, the staff is pretty packed, all things considered. This was a really cool episode, maybe not as explosive as some people may have come to expect with the show, but granted, what it sets up for the future, I think, is really explosive in its own right. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. What did you think, and where do you think this plotline is going to go, given everything we just experienced? There's a lot of good theories you could probably make after this episode, and I'd love to read yours down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.